cousin Elias. Hello. And we also have his cousin Ellie. I don't know if you guys can see her. It's breakfast time here at the house. So typically, let me see. Let me get Noah started. And let me get Jenny in here. So I want you to introduce you guys to founder of Solid Starts, Jenny Best. She's amazing. She's so helpful with everything baby-led weaning. I consider her an expert in that. So we're going to wait for her to join. And let me get her in here. Oh, Noah started drumming, so this is not the time for that right now, baby.
Hey, Amanda.
Hi, Jenny.
You did it. I took your Instagram live virginity. I keep seeing
this. This is my first time going live.
Congratulations. It's nice to meet
Thank
you.
you so much. Nice to officially meet you.
So who do you have with you? I heard Noah.
We have a whole gang over here right now. We have Noah in his little tattooed shirt. And we have Elias, his cousin.
Hello.
Just like eagle.
And we have Ellie, his other cousin, right here. She's 7 months. I was thinking
my gosh.
She's already chowing down on eggs.
Love. It's so nice to meet you. A number of our followers are probably joining you and are probably like, who is this person? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So my name's Amanda Awadis. And so I'm kind of like an online presence. I have a following between moms and young parents and everything. And so I'm a working mom based in San Diego, and I had my baby at the height of the pandemic. And so there were limited resources available to me at that time. And that's when I found your page. And that was a godsend. It was word of mouth. It was from Facebook, all the mom groups and everything that we join and all the information and everything. And once I stumbled across your page, I was like, this is so real and genuine. And you show the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And it's so relatable. And I think that's what drew me to this page, drew me to you. And I tell everyone I know, I'm on Facebook groups now. I was like, just start there. Really, it's changed the way, I thought about babies eating.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How can I be helpful in your feeding journey right now?
Okay, so now Noah's transitioned a little bit. He's definitely, my first main goal was to get him started on solids, chewing and everything. That's okay now. I'm more concerned about his diet. I was getting questions about salt intake. What exactly, size meat is meat okay? My mom, she's very traditional, so she's always very weary of giving them large chunks.
Yeah.
When actually in reality it should be, it could be more beneficial if they just start off with big chunks.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's dig in a little bit. So welcome, everybody. My name's Jenny. I'm the founder of Solid Starts. And Amanda and I are just going to chat a little bit about baby-led weaning and give you some tips, very basic tips in that arena, but also some tips on preventing picky eating early on. So,
yes.
Well, let's back up to the size of food question, and then we'll also talk about sodium and some of the other hot topics. Yes. So, 100 years ago when baby food was invented, before 1920, 1930, didn't really exist. There wasn't these, perfect little jars of purees and or cans of baby food necessarily. Prior to that, families were modifying family food to introduce to their babies. Now, that said, babies were eating solids a lot later in life than they were, today. In 1880, the average age of starting solids was 11 months old, which when you think about it, it really renders baby food as we know it unnecessary, right? Like by 11 months old, they're on their way to getting some real teeth, maybe even a molar coming in a month or two. They've got their pincer grasp, they can pick, they have all the fine motor skills they need to eat real food. So in comes Gerber and baby food, and what we see is the average age slowly over many decades starts to decline and decline, all the way down in 1950 to the average age of 4 weeks old, not months.
That's
Weeks.
insane.
Can you even imagine? In 1950, it was really common, maybe for your grandmother or others, to be feeding their babies and, you know, starting solids at 1 month of age. At 1 month of age, baby food is 100% necessary if that's the age you're going to start on, right? Because they're not even holding their
Nothing
head up. They're
developed.
probably
Exactly.
eating in a reclined position. So when I'm saying all this, because when we think about the size of food, we have a lot of unlearning to do. Everything we've been taught in the last century, which is, you know, primarily come from massive baby food corporations and marketing and advertising, has been that babies have to go from one stage of thickness to another and to gradually increase that so that they learn to chew. But it turns out, and this is what really gets me about like stage 2 foods, which are like
Yes.
kind of
I
chunky,
fell
but
for
still
it.
purees.
Yeah.
This is what gets me about the marketing of that. When a baby is being fed a puree or a stage 2 food off of a spoon, they are sucking to swallow that food. It's a really important distinction when we talk about the size of food. They are sucking to swallow. Have you ever noticed, like, if you put something on a baby's tongue, they're not quite sure what to do with it. And many of them need to use their fingers. They'll suck on their fingers or the actual spoon to like get it down, right? That's why the chew reflex, what we need to chew, is not stimulated unless you offer really chewable food. So if you've ever put your finger in your baby's mouth, like right here, and they kind of like gum down and bite down on you, that's just a reflex, not unlike a doctor tapping your knee at the office and waiting for your leg to kick out. That's the chew reflex, which is why we love giving babies teethers and spoons even well before you start solids, for them to really kind of explore the boundaries of their mouth and to get that chew reflex going. So back to the size of food and meat and your mom freaking out about
Yes.
you giving your baby meat and all of that. You know, look, first we want you to know what's a choking hazard and what's not, because it's a little bit of a decision tree, right? So if the food is not a choking hazard, the size and shape don't really matter. We're talking about making it easy for babies to pick up, to bring to their mouth, and to pull out of their mouth if they want to. So that's why bigger can be better. But you can also happily have a baby finger painting with a puree or a pouch, applesauce, yogurt, and kind of self-feeding and hand scooping that way. So low-risk foods, the size and shape don't really matter as much. You just really want to focus on making it easy for baby to eat independently. When it comes to things like meat, which is a choking hazard, regularly shows up in the top 10 choking hazards, at least in the United States, and that data, we want to be a lot more careful with it. But again, let's go back to the unlearning that we need to do.
Yes.
Most baby food cookbooks that you will see on the market will show perfectly sized cut little cubes of meat. We don't want to do that. Here's why. Particularly with like 6 to 8 month old babies, they have not yet learned sort of where things are in their mouths, which is to say, if you and I take a bite of a hard-boiled egg and there's a little piece of shell, our brain and our tongue are gonna kind of find that piece of shell, move it around and spit it out almost without thinking about it. A 6-month-old baby, that piece of shell won't even register. Their brain has not really made a mental map of their mouth yet, which is why smaller pieces of food can cause a lot of gagging and discomfort. They almost don't know where it is, how to move it around. There's a piece of rice in the middle of my tongue. What do I do with that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen
why,
Noah like.
Yeah, rice always makes babies
Yes.
gag. It's like the number one gaggy food in my book. So that's why bigger can be better, because the brain is going to say, oh, I feel that spare rib poking over here, but I don't feel that tiny cube of meat. Now, the other thing I want to just get across when it comes to small pieces of meat, like a cube of steak or a cube of cheese, I think we're taught that those little pieces are safer, but they're really not. Your 6-month-old infant's airway, your being the general audience here, is about the diameter of a drinking straw. It is tiny, tiny, tiny. that doesn't mean that anything bigger than that opening is going to cause your baby to choke. It means that for a baby to choke, a 6-month-old baby, a piece of food has to be able to make it in to that drinking straw and get stuck there. The really big pieces of meat, I'm talking, you know, big, like 1-inch size pieces of food, they're not even small enough to make it far enough back down into near the trachea where that would happen. So we have, like I said, we have a lot of unlearning to do when it comes to choking and the safety of food. Generally with 6 to 8-month-olds, bigger is better and safer. So the big question we always get is, but my baby's gonna take a bite. What if my baby takes a bite of it and it's too big, right? Or it's the size of the cube of steak. Remember that the goal is for your baby to take a bite. I know that, like, as a parent starting solids, you're like, oh my God,
it was scary.
Oh no, I took a bite. But we actually do want our children taking bites of food. So the best thing I can tell you is that your baby has a lot of reflexes that have your back. There's the tongue thrust reflex. There's the gag reflex. There's a flap of tissue that covers your baby's airway when you're swallowing to prevent food from even getting into the airway. So your baby's body is really designed to protect you against choking, to protect them against choking. So back to the size of steak, we're going to look at pieces the size of 2 fingers together, 2 adult fingers together. We love meat on bones for 6-month-olds, drumsticks, spare ribs, that kind of thing. But also shredded meat like brisket or just finely chopped meat that can kind of fall apart more easily. So bigger can be safer and better. You sound like you have a lot going on back there.
We have some dogs. I'm at my mother-in-law who takes care of the kids. I'm like, let me let Noah out there play with the puppies. I wanted to say for the audience too, something that helped me gain like a lot of confidence was your story highlight on the difference between choking and gagging. That changed my entire perspective. And, you know, I would have been freaking out almost every time at dinner if I didn't watch that. And I would be able, you know, I tell my husband, I tell my mom and my mother-in-law, like, no, you know what, give him a second and I think he can figure it out. And he is like amazed me with how far he's come. And I do attribute that to definitely like all of the knowledge I've gotten from you. And I'm amazed. Like, you know, with the sippy cup, even I've been giving him sippy cups early on and spoon feeding, and then, you know, people are like, oh, it's so messy and everything, but I say it's worth it. It's baby steps they have to learn, you know. And this is what I was gonna say on picky eating. I know I'm all over the place.
No, it's fine.
A lot of people were asking about like vegetables.
More
veggies.
How to get your kids to eat
which
veggies.
is Noah too.
So first, we have to just embrace the uphill battle in a lot of ways. A lot of vegetables have bitter compounds. They are not as sweet as other foods, and babies are sort of programmed to like sweet foods. Also, like, sweet foods deliver a denser caloric intake more immediately. So there's like a physiological, almost like cavewoman style of thinking there too, which is like you get nutrition in quickly. So it is something that needs to be an acquired taste in a lot of ways. That said, if you start the veggies early, 6 months of age, and you continuously keep offering them until it's completely regular. Don't assume that your baby won't want some of your sauteed onions. Most babies love them. I think often we end up getting in the way and kind of making a self-fulfilling prophecy with vegetables, right? So let's say you've got a 12-month-old. You missed the boat a little bit on vegetables. Now you've got a toddler who's a bit picky and you're really not sure how to get that in the mix. This is where you're going to have to get like a little, almost like mad scientist-y in the kitchen. You're going to want to think about play. You're going to want to think about engaging your toddler in activities away from the table. So we actually just posted a reel on this very topic, which gives 10 tips for getting toddlers and picky eaters to taste vegetables. So things you can do are like, oh, let's peel this potato together and then cook it together. Often you'll see, especially older toddlers, if you invite them into the kitchen and do some of that prep work together, they will kind of graze and nibble on whatever the prep food is that you're working with. So I remember like my daughter's first taste of raw kale, which I honestly, and I'm building a food database, a free food database for babies, didn't really think about introducing raw kale because I just assumed she wouldn't be able to grind it with her molars and really care for it. And so we did kale chips and we did sauteed kale and we did kale and omelets, but I never did raw kale until she was like 18 months. And I was making a salad. She goes, "Mommy, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm making a salad. Do you want to help me?" And she pulled up her, step stool, got on it, and just starts eating fistfuls of kale, raw kale. And, it wasn't,
Yeah,
I
that
think
sounds like
those little moments work so well because it's not mealtime. They're away from the pressure of the table. And it's almost like, it's like a play experiment for them. It's not really about eating. So the more you can kind of channel the environment changes like that and think about vegetables like an appetizer before dinner, just kind of hanging out on the coffee table for anyone who might want to taste, zero pressure, not at the table. That can be a great way to introduce new foods or vegetables that your toddler might not be willing to eat. I will say that I'm not a proponent of like cutting things into hearts and stars and putting things on toothpicks and all of that because it's not how vegetables normally show up in real life. So, if you spend 2 years in preschool making hearts and stars and all the shapes and all of that, and then you go to a restaurant, are you going to be making hearts and stars and shapes there? No. Now, if that is a gateway for your child to eventually appreciate the taste of cheddar cheese or whatever it is, go for it. Like, I'm a mom of picky eater. I've been there. It is madness, and it goes on for a really long time. But when it comes to the younger babies and young toddlers, just imagine play. One of the best things you can do is to actually prepare the food at the table in front of them. This works really well for fruits they may not have seen. Peel the orange in front of them. Let them peel. Crack a hard-boiled egg and start peeling the shell. Cut a piece of fruit and show them the color inside. Often when they see the whole food, like the whole spaghetti squash or the whole zucchini, whatever it is, they get a lot more interested. Toddlers aren't super interested in tiny little pieces of food. It's hard for them to pick up because even with their pincer grasp, it can take a lot of concentration, and it takes a lot of concentration with the fork as well. You're asking a lot of them when you make things really small. So vary the sizes, put a few choices. If you really want your child to eat broccoli, offer broccoli and cauliflower at dinner, and then they have a choice of 2 vegetables. Play with sprinkles. Parmesan cheese can be called sprinkles. Put it in a little cup and let them sprinkle it on themselves. Or put a little butter or oil in a little creamer and let them pour it on themselves. You want to just really get creative about thinking about how can I engage my child with this food without any pressure to eat it.
And your tips honestly have changed the way I think and feed Noah and approach mealtime and dinner time. And it really did. I'm so happy that I went this route with him, and I'm definitely going to continue through all my, if I have future children, they're definitely going down this route. Because I feel like every time I watch your stories, I'm like part of the family at the dinner table. And I'm like, wow, that's smart. Next time I'm going to bring the plate of fruit to the table and let him play with it. Exactly. And he's going, and he's going to eat it. He could taste it. And if he doesn't like it now.
Babies and toddlers learn through play. This is going to be a theme throughout your entire life. You sit a kid down and ask them to write their name, they're not going to be super interested in using a pencil for the first time. But if you get really creative and imaginative about what we're drawing, now we're talking about using a pencil in a different way. So I think as new moms, this is a tip we can kind of extrapolate to or apply to a lot of different areas of growth and development. It's all about play.
Yeah.
Which can make our mothers-in-laws a little crazy.
And myself, imagination all day long, right?
Yes, exactly.
It makes a difference, and it is easier, in the long run doing this and having them on board. And I feel like it creates more capable kids as well. And I
Yes.
see Noah, he doesn't get out of the kitchen now because he's always so like interested in what's going on and everything. So
Yes.
it really,
I
I'm
love that you
so happy.
use that word because I think that the entire baby food industry is built on the assumption that children are not capable, that babies are not capable, that toddlers are not capable. And it's really quite the opposite. They are
Mm,
so amazing and they are so ready to learn
I
if you
agree.
give them the opportunity.
Oh yeah, I agree. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jenny.
What
Like
other tips can
100%.
I share with you guys? Like, you want to talk about preventing picky eating more, or what's most helpful?
I know maybe picky eating might be the best route, or I know what, as I'm reading through the comments, people were saying that sometimes their kids just don't eat at all. Either they
Yes.
might not be
Okay.
hungry, or even if it's
So, well, let's talk
mealtime.
about the slope into picky eating because a lot of kids go through it. When we talk about picky eating, there's sort of two different ways I want you to think about it. One is the standard, years of picky eating, which is basically like 18 months to age 4. It's just a more selective time. Toddlers are really asserting their independence. Preschoolers, are really big on saying no and doing it their way. And food is often one of the only things they can control from start to finish, right? So it's really common for toddlers just to move through what we would call a more selective eating phase. When we talk about like my son Charlie, for example, we're talking about a severe picky eater. How do you know if you have a picky eater? I would say if mealtime is causing you stress, if you are consistently worried about what to make that night for dinner because your child might not eat it, if your child is consistently refusing meals completely or just eating like a number of things, like you might say, my child only eats 7 things, then we're talking about picky eating. We don't consider any baby below 12 months of age to be a picky eater. So if a baby below 12 months of age is not eating, there's something else happening that can usually be resolved quite quickly. Schedule changes, sleep changes, ounces of formula changes, whatever. So let's talk about that more kind of typical slide into picky eating, because that's what the majority of the population is experiencing. What often happens is that a child, 6 to 12 months old, will eat almost anything, including like dad's leather shoe, right? They will put everything and anything in their mouth, which is why it's such an amazing time to introduce a wide variety of food and get them used to it. By 12 months of age, that child is a little bit more aware of that they like white bread more versus brown bread, and I like red apples more than green apples, and it's like a bit more of a selection going on in their mind, and also a more assertive personality. No, I don't want that, like as they're taking a bite, you're eating it as you're
Exactly.
saying no,
Exactly.
and so there's a behavioral thing, there's a control thing going on, there's an independence thing going on. Your job as a parent from like 12 months to age 4 and beyond is really to stay calm, cool, and steady. This is where most people fall down, Amanda. This is where I fell down a lot with my firstborn. I freaked out. I panicked that he wasn't eating. I started, really kind of, are you sure you want one more bite? Just one more bite? Just one more bite? And constantly leaving food out around the house because he didn't eat enough for dinner. So I think I need to do an after dinner snack. And then he didn't really eat that much. So I need to do a bigger breakfast, and constantly obsessing about nutrition and weight gain. And, it piles on to the child, and it's like boom, 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 boom. They start to feel really anxious when they're coming to the table. Like, why is mom freaking out so much? And why is everyone watching me?
Yeah.
Why is this so intense? So my best phrase that I can give everyone watching is when your child is slipping into more selective eating, when they refuse to eat, when they throw the food, whatever it is that's going to flip your switch and make you go crazy, I want you to feign indifference. It's another way of saying fake it until you make it, or almost act like you don't care. Not to be without empathy for what your child might be going through in that moment, but to make sure that you check your emotions at the table. We don't want to bring any added stress to the table. A lot of picky eating is about a child feeling anxious at the table. So the first step is to remove the layer of anxiety or stress that's coming. So, okay, so how do you feign indifference when you want to scream or cry or all these things? You have to basically kind of put on a Stepford smile and say, oh, okay, you don't want to eat lunch today? That's all right. There'll be more at snack time.
Literally, you live in my head
really
every day, and
that.
I just say,
And then take the food away, and snack time will follow. Don't go run into the kitchen to make macaroni and cheese or their favorite sandwich, or get crackers or whatever that's going to make you feel better that their belly is full, or a pouch. You can be firm. It's okay to let your 12-month-old plus child to feel hungry as a result of deciding not to eat. I know that can be a difficult kind of concept, especially as mothers, to wrap our heads around, because
opposite
we've been feeding them since birth. It's so hard, but it's one of the best ways and the fastest ways to sort of teach them that food is served at the table, and when you're hungry, you can come to the table, you eat, and then you are satisfied and you're not hungry anymore. A lot of parents really forget that if you're constantly dripping food to your child throughout the day, they actually are never really feeling that hungry. And so there's not really any motivation to try a new food or to finish a meal. So that's one of the things we often work on with parents, is just getting comfortable with letting the child decide if they're going to eat. Your job is to bring the food to the table. It pretty much stops there. Once it's at the table, it's your child's job to decide if they want to eat and how much.
Yeah, and that's hard for parents. I know it was hard for me to let go of that, because I want everything to be, if I made you this food, I want you to eat a lot of it, but that's not how it works. Sometimes kids are hungry more in the morning, sometimes they're not, and it depends.
And dinner is always a bomb because everyone's tired.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's on their last nerve and everything, but I do, and I'm being honest, I hear your voice when you say feign indifference, every night. Or if he's throwing his food, I'm like, okay, mealtime's over then, that's that, and I just put it away, and I'm like, move on. Even if it bothers me, I don't want him to let him know, and then after that, I'm like, okay, next meal, we'll try again.
Exactly.
And then I'm sure you're going to be
exactly.
It's a struggle.
One tip I can give you all as you're thinking about how you're going to cook for your family or how you're going to prepare meals, I often, look, a lot of us, when we're couples, we're ordering in a lot of takeout. We're sometimes just going by the feel of the minute. Oh, what do you want for dinner tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
When you have kids, that gets more complicated, and the more children you have, the harder meal planning and all of that gets, because you can't just do it on the fly. It's more difficult. One tip I have for you is you kind of think about how you want to, what kinds of things you want to cook, how often you want to cook, what groove you're getting into, is to think about feeding yourself first. I know when you have a baby, it feels like the opposite has to happen, and that it's baby first all the time. It doesn't have to be that way. You can think, okay, what can I eat for lunch today that baby can enjoy? Then when your baby or toddler or preschooler or high schooler decides not to eat that meal, it's not like a personal insult to you, which changes the dynamic at the table. So then it's about, okay, how can I modify what I'm eating to be safe for baby? Let's talk about sodium, since someone had a sodium question.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, first we have a huge sodium page on our website if you want to see exactly the milligrams, how much your baby's age can have and all of that. Just go to solidstarts.com and search sodium. This is the bottom line on sodium. You don't have to be as afraid as you probably have been led to think that you need to be. Look, I think that there was a lot of hype around sodium 5 years ago or so. Babies can't have any sodium at all. And kids are today, especially in the United States, consuming more sodium than they should. So I don't want to minimize that health topic. That is a fact, and the numbers aren't trending in the right direction. So we do want to keep an eye on it. But it's not lethally dangerous as, you know, many of us have been led to think. Sodium can actually be lethally dangerous, but not if it's in your food and babies just eating, and especially self-feeding. Now, if you're going to put 2 teaspoons of sodium in a child's mouth, that is a dangerous situation. They will have to go to the hospital. But, you know, sodium in food, you know, don't worry too much about it. Now, does that mean you should be dousing everything with fish sauce and soy sauce and, you know, tons of marinades? No, we kind of want to stay away from some of those things. And you want to stay away from like using those as dips or sprinkling salt on baby's food. But if you've made a roast chicken and you've chicken off, which is a good idea anyway for choking, and don't worry about it. That little bit of sodium that they're actually ingesting isn't going to make a measurable difference.
Yeah, that's good to know, because I know that came up a lot, and that comes up on the Facebook groups too, you know, and I want to tell them it's not too bad, but also keep in mind, because that is something I forget as well. You know, no, I can't eat something as salty as we can.
Yeah, you know, a lot of parents end up eating a little bit better when they have,
it's so
or
true.
I should say new parents, they end up, and then it gets worse because you get so tired, but a lot of new parents end up kind of cleaning up their own diets a little bit because, you know, because baby is there and of the sodium.
And they're watching, and now he's like watching what we're eating. And
Exactly. Let's see. I probably have like one last section I can do with you. What are some of the like most common questions you got last night, or that you get, or that you have?
I'm still seeing a lot, and a couple of my personal friends, they were saying their baby just is. How will they know the signs? I should say. What are the
of
signs
like readiness?
Of readiness. Yeah.
So this is a great question because say again.
Oh, aside from like holding the head on their own.
So there's basically 4. So being able to hold the head up strong. You don't want baby's head flopping around, you know, a good core stability so they can safely sit in a high chair upright and they're not kind of like leaning to the side. This is a safety thing because, you know, you need core strength to make fine motor and smaller movements in your tongue and throat. It's not something that most people understand, but your baby's trunk, their middle, needs to be strong to be able to make the smaller motions of reaching, grabbing, biting, chewing, and moving food around and swallowing. So we want good head control, we want good core strength control. Typically that's kind of observed as a baby who's able to sit. So if your baby is able to kind of sit like either in a tripod, especially if they're able to kind of reach and grab and move around when they sit, that's a really good sign that they're ready. Another sign you can look for is just them watching you eat. Are they interested? That's a really good sign too. Are they kind of smacking their lips or mouthing when you're eating? We want to introduce food to babies when they're interested in it, because if you bring a baby to the high chair who might be strong, who might have head control, but who's not quite interested yet, it's just going to be a little bit of a rough start. It's not the end of the world, it's just a little bit of a rough start, and then there's a weird dynamic at the table and you might kind of have to do some resets. So
that's really good to know.
Generally all of these signs typically show, you know, anywhere from 6 to 7 months of age. If you've got a 6.5-month-old baby and you're not sure if they're ready and they're not really showing those signs, it's a good time to talk to your doctor.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That answered the question perfectly.
Yeah.
Because the kind of, you know, the baby is not interested, they kind of move their head back and forth, and so maybe just wait.
And you know what, like
less
all of you with the 6-month-old and 5-month-old babies, remember just how rapidly things change. Like yesterday they weren't leaning at all and now they're like leaning on their side, you know? All these little things show up even just days later or weeks later. So even waiting 1 more week, it can make a world of difference. It doesn't have to be a long time to wait. But do lots of floor time. You know, we're going to do sort of a series of prep for the table videos and things like that, but like getting baby ready for the table. But one of the best things you can do is just really put your baby on the floor a lot. I know it can be hard and tummy time can be uncomfortable, but on the floor, on the side, all different motions, on your forearm, on your knees, so they can kind of hold their head up and look around and get really strong back here. Just get really creative with letting them twist and turn and reach and push and all those things that really strengthen the core.
I love it. I love it.
Whew. Okay,
I know.
Amanda.
I
Did we
think
cover
that
it?
answers
We cover
most
some
of
of the
my
bases
questions.
for you?
I think we need to have another live soon.
Happy to. Happy to.
Right?
Anytime.
No,
It was really nice
appreciate
seeing
your
all of the
time.
babes, and good luck with the feeding. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me.
Thank you. Oh, you know I'm always watching your story. Thank you so much. And I
Bye,
really
everybody.
appreciate everything you've done. Have a good rest of your day, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Guys. Thanks,
Bye.
Amanda.
Aw, thank you guys for tuning in and joining. You guys are so sweet for asking everything. I'm sorry if there were any weird comments. So just avoid that. But really, so if you guys do have any other questions from that, my DMs are open and I can talk to Jenny and her team of experts and then let you guys know, what the general answers are. So I have to go back to work, right? So here are the rest of the kids. Let me, before I go. They're just dancing now. All right, guys. Thanks again for tuning in.